Hey everyone, it's Sarah at Repeat Crafter Me, and I'm going to show you some tips today on how to work with this new Red Heart all-in-one granny square yarn. So this is a new yarn that came out this year from Red Heart. Each one of these balls, skeins, can make 14 granny squares. And it has preset color changes, as you can see. And this allows you to keep on crocheting without having to fasten off your yarn and join in a new color, which if you had to do that, you would have a ton of ends to weave in. But here you will only have one end at the beginning and one end at the end of that last round there. And that's it. So it's kind of a really cool concept, and I was just working on these Christmassy squares. I have the Verdant vine and the ruby red, and I'm going to be putting these together to make a granny square Christmas blanket. So I just love these two. I'll leave the links to these colors. But let's just go ahead and do one of these squares together, because many of you have said, I just can't get this yarn to work. I can't get the color changes right. So for me, sorry, I shoved the yarn back in there. So for me, it's all about tension. And before we get into that, I want to show you on each of the labels. Well, you can just look here at the front. It's going to tell you which color you want to start with. So just in case you have a new ball of this and it's not pulling out with that first color. So there's the first color. You're gonna want to kind of snip off till you get to that, but it should just start on the first color, because as you can see, the first color will be shorter, and then it's going to give you a little more yarn for that second color, a little more yarn for the third, fourth, and then you'll end with either black or white, depending on which ball colorway you choose. All right. So I just know from experience, and that's why I'm kind of giving you these tips right now on camera. I usually leave about, I don't even know how long this is, but a little bit of a tail before I start making my magic ring. And I found it's easiest to use an H hook. I know some people are sizing up a little bit or sizing down. You will have to do one or two of these to see what works best for you. So I'm starting with a magic ring. I'm chaining 3, and that is going to count as my first double crochet. And I'm going to make 2 more double crochets. And that's going to be my first little granny cluster there. Chain 2, making 3 more double crochets. I'm just working in this ring. And as you can see, I'm kind of just keeping an even tension. It's actually kind of loose. I'm a loose crocheter, so it's gonna look probably pretty loose than maybe what you're used to if you crochet tightly. So I'm doing a third one. So 3 more double crochets, chain 2. Now I need 1 more set of double crochets, and I can kind of, sorry, the yarn's kind of coming apart here. I can already see, so you're going to want to kind of look ahead. I can see where that color change is, starting right about here. All right. So I'm going to think, can I get 3 more double crochets out of this, plus a chain 2? I think I can. So let's just see. I'm going to keep kind of that same tension. 2, 3. Where are we at? Oh, honestly, I'm kind of right on. I'm a little surprised, actually. I was going to show you how to either adjust that, frog it, or make it tighter, but I kind of planned that out perfectly. And I have about that much of the tail. So you might want to do the same. Start when you do your magic ring, kind of leave that. And you will need this to weave in at the end. All right, so I'm joining. I see my color changes about here, and that's okay. I'm actually going to slip stitch over, just so I'm working in that first loop. I've also shown you a way to do this in previous videos where I actually turn and go the opposite direction. Whatever feels comfortable for you. I think this is the most basic way to make the grannies. And I believe this is the pattern that Your Inspirations has on their website too, where you slip stitch over to that first chain space. All right, so the color changes already happened, so I'm going to go ahead and chain 3. We're going to be making our double crochets. chain 2, oop, 3 more double crochets, and chain 1, work in the next one. Now again, I'm kind of keeping that same tension, maybe a little slightly tighter, just kind of trying to keep consistent. Try not to overthink it. All right, chain 1, go to the next corner. Double crochets, chain 2, 3 more double crochets, chain 1. Okay, I'm at my last corner. So this is kind of where I pause when I'm looking at this to see how much do I have left. All right, this color change is kind of hard to see, but it goes from kind of a darker green to a lighter green right here. So I'm going to need to make one more corner. Gosh, I think I'm right on. Now, this isn't really helpful now that everything's turning out just so beautifully right now, but I'm gonna see here if I can make this last corner where I'm at. All right, it's hard to see this color change on camera. It's right about there. So actually I kind of have a little bit too much, but I'm just gonna loosely do that chain 1 and then join to that first double crochet and just slip stitch over. And gosh darn it, it's perfect again. Okay, it may not be perfect on the next one, so let's just keep going just so you can see what happens if it doesn't work out. I've been doing these for a while, so as you can see, when you start to do a bunch of them, you kind of get into that rhythm, and your tension is how tight or loosely you're crocheting. So I've really kind of honed in on like a great tension that I know is going to work. So I'm just continuing with this granny square pattern. I'll leave a link to how to do these. They have a video on the Yarn Inspirations website, as well as I'm sure some other places too, if you're not familiar with the basic granny square pattern. But isn't it nice? Look, I just still have that one end and it's already looking so cute. All right, so let's keep going. Kind of keeping an eye on my yarn. I don't know why this strand's popping out over there. Keeping an eye on my yarn, being mindful of where that next color change is. Even as I am coming about halfway through this round. Chain 2. I've also noticed that sometimes you will need to have your tension a little bit looser. So crochet a little bit looser on the first few rounds, and then the last two, you're going to want to tighten that up. I've also seen some people switch to a smaller hook size for the last two, just because it seems like there isn't just quite enough yarn on those last two rounds. Okay. Let's see where we're at. Okay, what do I have? Oh, I have one more to go. Okay, and here we go. So I'm pulling out my yarn to see where that next color change is. So it's right here. So how much yarn do we have left? I think I can do, and I know I need 3 more double crochets and a chain 1. Actually, I kind of have a lot left over there, but that's okay because I'm going to chain 1 and I'm slip stitching over. Okay. Here we go. I see the next color change. Chain 3, that always counts as your first double crochet. And it's okay. See how my first chain ended up being in that other color? You won't really notice. Let's see. I know that happened a few times as I was doing these. I was going to try and find an example. And of course, I don't even spot it because you won't be able to tell. But there were several of these where the chain stitch was, as I was changing, was kind of in a different color. But once it's all together, you don't notice. All right, so they had my chain 3. And let's do our double crochets. So I'm just continuing with our granny square pattern. Oop. Okay, let's see how this one turns out. This really was a great ball of yarn to bring while I was traveling, because I only needed one. I only needed to bring one color because all the colors are right here in that skein of yarn for me, and I was able to crochet a bunch of granny squares on the airplane. So that's why I'm kind of jumping into Christmas right now, because I had this yarn that I knew I was going to make something Christmassy with. All right, let's see, where are we? All right, we're coming around the bend. Right, I see where my color change is. It's right here. Let's see. I think I'm gonna make it again. Barely. So what you could do, since I haven't made my chain 1 and I haven't slip stitched over, and I know that's gonna eat into my black, although, to be honest, if I were you, I would keep going. But just for the fun of it, I'm just gonna unravel this a little bit, maybe even 4 stitches. And I'm just gonna make this a little tighter. Make my stitches here a little tighter. You're not gonna be able to tell on your final product there. Okay, so I just made those tighter, and it just left me a little bit more green there just to make those last stitches. Now I can join. Whoop. And slip stitch over. I'm already at my black there. Come on. All right, last round. So this is where I made it just a little tighter. Still looks good. And I know this from before, so I'm just going to tell you guys this now. I feel like I kept running out of this black yarn as I was crocheting the last round of these. So this is where you might want to go a little bit tighter on your stitches, because when you think about it, you may want as much kind of yarn left over to just weave in your tail nicely. Oop. Come on. And I'm actually not, I'm not crocheting that tightly. I've actually kind of been keeping that same tension this whole time, but we'll see how we end up here. Like I said, you could always, I feel like it's easier just to go back and frog your work a little bit, undo some stitches. That's just easier to me than flipping the yarn off, adding in new yarn, weaving in more tails. So it doesn't bother me to do that. I'm a pretty fast crocheter too, so I can kind of correct things in a timely manner. All right, we're coming up on our last round. So I'm gonna go, oh, what do we have here? All right, so this is about how much of the black I have left. I know I have at least 6 more double crochets. I don't think I'm gonna get that out of this. Let's just try it and see. Because this is where I wanna show you if this is what happens. Yeah, look, here's my color change. You can see right here. And I still have all this to go. So if I were to keep going, it's not gonna work for 2 reasons. Number 1, it's gonna be the wrong color on this last stitch. Okay, number 2, you've now eaten into the yarn you need to start your new square. Okay, so I'm just gonna backtrack. And you can, I would go more than a few here, because we are gonna need to get these stitches much tighter. All right. I had a feeling that was gonna happen, so I really should have been keeping these tight to begin with, or sized down a hook. I just don't even think I'm making these tight enough, but let's see. So I am just really kind of pulling this tighter than I normally do. Just adjusting my tension to really make those stitches much tighter than they would normally be. And also keep in mind that crochet is very forgiving. It stretches a lot. So if you have some stitches that are tighter and some are looser, I wouldn't worry too much about it. When you are joining these for your blanket, you're still going to have enough stitches to line everything up. Oop. Okay, I have 1 left. See how I made those stitches so much tighter? I was just really pulling harder on that. You can't really tell. They're not that much different, right? And I think I'm going to have enough now to finish that last cluster. Barely. Okay, so this isn't ideal. I could have gone back a little bit more, but I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to redo it at this point. I'm just going to join. Remember, you don't have to slip stitch over. Okay, if I can get this in here, I'm just going to join. It's starting to change color. Let me get my scissors. So I'm going to clip this off. I'm going to try and make this tail kind of short. I still am going to weave that in, but you have to be mindful that this now was the start of your next square. So I'm actually going to either start crocheting with a shorter tail on my magic ring round, or you could do both. When we start a new square, we are going to make this a little bit tighter. Don't have that loose tension that I had originally, because you've already used a little bit of your yarn there. So that's kind of how I'm just starting this one just to see where we end up. Maybe I'll be okay. But I don't know, those are kind of some tips. Maybe it's just easier when you see somebody crochet it as well. I feel like it kind of gives you a better idea of how this yarn works. And honestly, I've just been having such a good time with it. I have, oh gosh, I don't know, probably 10 projects now I've done with this yarn. So, there's my color change right about there. So I was just crocheting a little tighter. Look, I left kind of a lesser of a tail, just because I knew, gosh, I need one more. That was going to be a little bit dicey there at the beginning. So that's just kind of how you think about it as you go. Look, only 2 ends to weave in. How convenient is that? And you have these colors. You didn't even have to think about coordinating colors. Again, the yarn kind of did it for you, and I think these are going to just be so cute in a blanket. I think we all agreed that alternating the squares is going to be the best way to put these together, so I'll have to show you this when it's done, but I hope you kind of enjoyed those tips on how to use this Red Heart all-in-one granny square yarn, and I will leave a link to all of the patterns that I've made with this new yarn. Thanks for watching. See you next time.